High blood pressure after 60 does not arrive like a storm. It settles in quietly, often unnoticed, shaping the internal climate of the body long before it is measured or named. Many people imagine blood pressure as a mechanical problem, a faulty gauge or a stiff pipe, but the body is not a machine in the simple sense. It is a living system that remembers. Every deadline met with a held breath, every worry carried silently through the chest, every moment of tension stored in the shoulders leaves a faint biological imprint. Over time, these imprints accumulate, and the cardiovascular system adapts to what it believes is a constant state of demand. The heart learns to beat with urgency, the vessels learn to stay slightly constricted, and pressure becomes the body's new normal rather than an emergency signal. With age, this adaptation becomes more pronounced because the body values survival over comfort. The nervous system, especially after decades of life experience, becomes finely tuned to potential threat, even when no immediate danger exists. This is why blood pressure often rises not during exertion, but during rest, medical appointments, or moments of quiet reflection. The mind relaxes, yet the nervous system remains alert, as if standing guard. In this state, the heart is not malfunctioning, it is responding faithfully to signals it has received for years. Understanding this shifts the conversation from blame to curiosity, from suppression to communication. The heart does not act alone. It listens constantly to messages from the brain, the breath, and the muscles of the neck and chest. Tiny sensors embedded in blood vessels report on pressure, stretch, and flow, sending real-time updates to the brainstem. When these signals suggest tension or imbalance, the brain adjusts heart rate and vascular tone within seconds. This means blood pressure is not a fixed trait of aging, but a dynamic reflection of internal signals. What changes after 60 is not the body's ability to regulate, but the language it has been taught to speak. Modern life trains the nervous system toward speed and vigilance. Even in retirement, the body often continues to operate as if it must be ready at all times. This chronic readiness keeps stress hormones subtly elevated, encouraging vessels to remain firm and the heart to work harder than necessary. Over years, this becomes familiar territory for the body, and familiarity is often mistaken for inevitability. Yet biology remains flexible far longer than we are taught to believe, especially when approached gently rather than forcefully. High blood pressure, in this light, becomes less a silent killer and more a silent conversation that has gone unheard. It is the body's way of saying that it has been holding too much, for too long. The danger lies not only in the numbers on a monitor, but in the misunderstanding of what those numbers represent. When pressure is treated solely as a defect to be overridden, the deeper signals remain unaddressed. When it is seen as information, a doorway opens to regulation rather than resistance. Aging does not mean the loss of control, it means a shift in strategy. Younger bodies respond well to intensity and correction, but older bodies respond best to reassurance and clarity. The nervous system softens when it senses safety, and blood pressure follows that softening naturally. This is why calm environments, slow movements, and mindful breathing can have measurable effects within minutes. The heart, when given permission to slow, often does so willingly. At its core, hypertension after 60 is a reminder that health is not maintained by force, but by alignment. When the signals of the nervous system, the rhythm of the breath, and the awareness of the mind begin to work together, the body remembers how to regulate itself. Blood pressure becomes less of an adversary and more of a guide, pointing gently toward balance, attention, and a quieter conversation within the living system of the heart. Breath is the only function of the body that lives in two worlds at once, automatic and voluntary, moving quietly in the background while also waiting for conscious guidance. This dual nature gives it extraordinary influence over blood pressure, especially later in life when the nervous system has become accustomed to operating at a higher baseline of alertness. When breathing is shallow or hurried, even without awareness, the brain interprets this as a signal of threat. Heart rate subtly increases, blood vessels maintain tone, and pressure rises not because danger is present, but because the language of the breath suggests it. In moments of stress or concentration, many people instinctively hold their breath or breathe against resistance. Over decades, this pattern becomes embedded, turning everyday breathing into a low-grade emergency signal. The cardiovascular system responds faithfully, maintaining higher pressure to ensure oxygen delivery and readiness. After 60, This pattern can persist even in stillness, making rest less restorative and keeping blood pressure elevated despite physical inactivity. A controlled pressure breath interrupts this loop by briefly changing the internal environment of the chest and abdomen. When the breath is guided slowly and deliberately, the pressure inside the thorax increases in a measured way. This pressure momentarily alters blood flow back to the heart and activates reflexes that recalibrate heart rhythm. The brain receives an updated message that circulation is being managed efficiently, and it responds by reducing sympathetic drive. This is not relaxation in the emotional sense, it is regulation in the physiological sense. What makes this maneuver powerful is its immediacy. Within seconds, the heart adjusts its timing, and blood vessels respond by easing their grip. The effect is often felt as a sudden sense of calm or clarity, but beneath that sensation is a precise neurological response. Sensors in the chest and major vessels report changes in pressure and stretch, triggering pathways that slow the heart and balance blood flow. Blood pressure lowers not through effort, but through feedback. This method has long been used in clinical environments because it works even when emotions are unsettled. It does not require belief, visualization, or extended practice. It relies on the body's existing reflex architecture. For older adults, this is especially valuable because it bypasses cognitive strain. The body remembers how to respond to breath long after other systems have slowed. Breathing slowly and with intention also restores rhythm, something the cardiovascular system depends on deeply. The heart is not designed to beat at a constant pace. Healthy hearts vary their timing in response to breath. When inhalation gently accelerates the heart and exhalation allows it to slow, a natural oscillation emerges. This variability is a sign of resilience. High blood pressure is often accompanied by rigidity, not only in vessels but in timing. Restoring breath rhythm reintroduces flexibility into the system. As breathing slows, the vagal pathways that connect the lungs, heart, and brain become more active. These pathways act as brakes, preventing excessive acceleration of heart rate and pressure. With age, these braking systems often become underused, not because they are damaged, but because breathing patterns no longer stimulate them. A simple pressure-based breath reawakens this circuit, reminding the nervous system that it has more than one mode of operation. The deeper lesson here is that control does not come from force. Many people try to lower blood pressure by tightening their focus, straining their body, or chasing relaxation. Breath teaches the opposite. When pressure is applied gently and released slowly, the body responds with cooperation. The heart listens, the vessels respond, and the brain updates its expectations. Over time, repeated exposure to this kind of breathing retrains the baseline. The nervous system becomes less reactive, less quick to interpret minor signals as threats. Blood pressure becomes more responsive, rising when activity demands it and falling when safety is restored. In this way, breath becomes not just a tool, but a teacher, guiding the aging body back toward balance through rhythm, feedback, and the quiet intelligence embedded in every inhale and exhale. Running quietly beneath conscious awareness is a network that constantly decides whether the body should defend or restore, accelerate or soften, brace or release. The vagus nerve is central to this decision-making, extending from the brainstem down through the chest and into the abdomen, touching the heart, lungs, and digestive organs along the way. Its role is not dramatic, yet it is decisive. When vagal signals are strong, the body favors conservation, repair, and balance. When they are weak or drowned out by stress signals, the cardiovascular system drifts toward tension, speed, and elevated pressure. With age, this nerve does not disappear or weaken by default, but it often becomes understimulated. Modern living teaches the nervous system to operate with the accelerator lightly pressed at all times, while the brake is rarely engaged. Blood pressure reflects this imbalance. The heart continues to receive messages of urgency, even in moments of safety. What makes the vagus nerve remarkable is that it can be activated through simple sensory input, bypassing complex thought and effort. One of the most direct access points lies in the ear, where small branches of this nerve reach the surface. Gentle touch or massage here sends signals upward to the brainstem, informing it that the environment is safe. This information is processed rapidly and subconsciously. The brain responds by adjusting heart rate and vascular tone, often within moments. Blood pressure begins to ease not because the vessels are forced open, but because the command to stay tight is withdrawn. Slow breathing amplifies this effect by synchronizing multiple systems at once. When exhalation is extended and unhurried, vagal activity increases naturally. The heart responds by slowing slightly, and the space between beats becomes more variable and adaptive. This variability is a sign that the nervous system is no longer locked into defense mode. In older adults, restoring this adaptability is more important than chasing low numbers, because flexibility predicts resilience. The combination of ear stimulation and slow breathing creates a layered message of safety. Touch provides sensory reassurance, while breath provides rhythmic confirmation. Together, they shift the internal environment away from vigilance. The body does not need to be convinced logically, it responds to sensation. This is why such gentle practices can be effective even when the mind remains busy or skeptical. From a biological perspective, this makes perfect sense. The nervous system evolved long before language or reasoning. It trusts sensory input more than intellectual intention. A calm touch and a slow breath are interpreted as evidence that the organism is not under immediate threat. Once this conclusion is reached, protective mechanisms such as elevated blood pressure become unnecessary. This approach aligns with the philosophy of physicians who emphasized longevity through regulation rather than intervention. They observed that the body's systems are designed to self-correct when the right signals are present. Rather than overpowering the heart with chemicals or intensity, they sought to restore communication pathways that had gone quiet. The vagus nerve was seen not as a target, but as a mediator, translating calm into physiology. For seniors, this gentleness is not a limitation but a strength. Aging nervous systems are more sensitive to abrupt change, yet highly responsive to consistency and reassurance. Repeated moments of vagal activation teach the brain that calm states are accessible and safe. Over time, this recalibration alters baseline expectations. The heart no longer prepares for constant demand. Vessels regain the ability to relax without losing integrity. What begins as a simple ear massage or a few slow breaths becomes a way of reminding the body of its original design. The cardiovascular system was never meant to operate under perpetual strain. It was meant to respond, adapt, and recover. By engaging the vagus nerve, the body is invited back into this cycle of responsiveness. Blood pressure shifts not as an act of control, but as a natural outcome of restored communication between brain, heart, and breath. Circulation is not driven solely by the strength of the heart but by the willingness of the body to receive and distribute blood without resistance. Warmth plays a subtle yet profound role in this process, especially in later life when vessels tend to stiffen and reflexes become more guarded. When warmth is applied to the feet, the body interprets it as an invitation rather than a demand. Blood naturally moves downward, easing pressure in the upper body and reducing the workload placed on the heart. This shift is not forced, it is guided by ancient thermoregulatory pathways that evolved to maintain balance. The feet contain a dense network of blood vessels and nerve endings that act as sensors for environmental conditions. When they detect warmth, signals travel to the brain that conditions are favorable and safe. The nervous system responds by relaxing peripheral vessels and redistributing circulation. This process mirrors what happens naturally in restful states, yet it can be intentionally encouraged through simple means. For older adults, whose circulation may be slower or more centralized, this gentle redirection can have a noticeable effect on blood pressure within minutes. What makes warmth so effective is its relationship with patience. Unlike intense exercise or aggressive interventions, warming the feet asks the body to slow down. It encourages vasodilation without triggering protective responses. The heart senses reduced resistance and responds by softening its output. Pressure falls not because the system is suppressed, but because it no longer needs to compensate. This distinction is essential in aging physiology, where cooperation yields better outcomes than correction. The practice of directing warmth downward reflects a broader philosophy found in cultures that value longevity. These traditions understood that excess heat and tension in the upper body often correlate with agitation, insomnia, and elevated pressure. Cooling the mind and warming the extremities was seen as a way to restore internal harmony. Modern physiology now echoes this wisdom, showing how peripheral warmth can modulate autonomic tone and reduce sympathetic dominance. A guided body scan enhances this effect by bringing awareness into the process. Attention itself is a biological signal. When awareness moves slowly through the body, tension that has gone unnoticed begins to release. Muscles soften, breathing deepens, and circulation improves. The nervous system registers this shift as intentional rest. Blood pressure responds accordingly, reflecting the state of the whole organism rather than isolated mechanics. For seniors, this approach respects the body's need for safety and predictability. Sudden changes in posture, temperature, or effort can provoke reflexive tightening. Gentle warmth and slow attention do the opposite. They create continuity, allowing the cardiovascular system to adjust smoothly. Over time, repeated experiences of safe relaxation retrain the baseline. The body becomes less inclined to maintain high pressure as a default state. The heart thrives when it does not have to shout to be heard. By improving circulation through warmth and awareness, the heart's message becomes clearer and calmer. Blood moves with less turbulence, vessels respond with flexibility, and the nervous system shifts toward balance. This is not merely a temporary effect. It represents a re-education of the body's expectations. In the end, the simplicity of this method is its strength. A warm foot soak and a few minutes of mindful attention do not appear powerful on the surface, yet they engage multiple systems simultaneously. They address circulation, nervous regulation, and perception of safety in one gentle act. Blood pressure lowers as a consequence of restored flow and trust within the body, reminding us that health in later years is often reclaimed not through struggle, but through small acts of alignment that allow the body to do what it has always known how to do.